Welcome back to some sad news now, as former Yankees manager and GM Gene Michael has passed away. He's considered the true architect of the Yankees dynasty that led the team to win 4 World Series in 5 years from 1996 to 2000. He also signed or drafted all of the core 4, including Derek Jeter. Peter, let's start with you. What did Gene Michael mean to this organization?
He meant an awful lot to the Yankees franchise and family. You got to remember when George Steinbrenner was suspended, Gene Michael took over the front office and really rebuilt the entire organization, starting with the trade of Paul O'Neill, the drafting of Jeter and Pettit, and signing Posada and Mariano. And he, to me, like, the biggest thing about Stick is that Stick was always willing to stand up to George Steinbrenner at a time when that wasn't the case, where George Steinbrenner would bully front office people. Stick is the reason that Mariano Rivera did not get traded when he was a young player, that Andy Pettit did not get traded when he was a young player. And to me, those decisions are what built the Yankees into the dynasty that they became.
Absolutely. Didn't trade Bernie Williams either, right? When Steinbrenner wanted to trade him every second that he could. And, even hiring a young manager like Buck Showalter, who, of course, has done some great things in Major League Baseball. Another underrated, remember Jimmy Key? Think of how invaluable Jimmy Key was, at least to those early 90s teams and then the 96 championship team. Guy who kind of retreated to the background a little bit, didn't like all the accolades or the fame, but as you said, Peter, where would that Yankees run have been without a Gene Michael?
Yeah, he permeates this organization. He was a player, he was the Triple Crown, a player, manager, GM, all these decisions, and also the idea that you can evaluate a baseball player both with your observations with your eyes, but also taking into account the stats, and look at his results, right, through trades or through drafting players that totally changed the course of baseball and of the Yankees' history. I think an example, and also it's very interesting to hear Derek Jeter say today how available he was to players like him as far as helping them grow. Very unusual thing to hear about. You think nowadays, like, somebody in the front office versus the players is like they're in different worlds, or it seems that way. But it's interesting to hear a player as great as Jeter comment on that.
And I think as a former player, I think that's an important part of it. Nowadays, you get most of the GMs and executives are, coming from this sabermetric world, or the, more from the mathematics side of it than from the baseball side of it. Stick was always a guy who would work his way through the minor league system and talk to guys and pump guys up and tell them not to give up. You saw, like you mentioned, Jeter was a big proponent of Sticks and vice versa. And I think the interesting thing to me with Stick is even after he left the GM job, turned it over to Bob Watson and then later to Brian Cashman, Cashman has always kind of leaned on Stick as a really valuable sounding board and mentor. This guy comes from a scouting background, even though he was a player, and Cashman would always run ideas by Stick, which is it shows you his value to the organization.
Yeah, you think about it, right? Like, the sabermetric world, which so many has just permeated Major League Baseball now. You have so many of these general managers who are Ivy Leaguers, and then they're in their early 30s. But Gene Michael, part of that guard that, really trust your eyes, trust your instincts, player evaluation, scouting, which has certainly changed over the years. Definitely going to be missed because we have seen that transition. He was one of those links back to the way things used to be.
Yeah, standing up to Steinbrenner, too, it's easy to say that. But it's another thing to actually think about how those conversations went.
And to be kept around for that long, too, while doing it, more importantly.
Right, I was just going to say, it's really a commentary on his longevity in the organization, that you're standing up to this huge personality, a guy who considers himself the Yankees almost, and yet you stick around and you become so valuable to so many people. You have to think, the Yankees will never be the same without this guy. He had something to do with everything about their team for decades.
The only guy who stood up to Steinbrenner as well maybe was George Costanza, right?
That's right. And he tried to get fired.
Exactly.
All right, thank you so much, guys.